Hi again, Gnomies! Are you ready for the second class of the day? Go ahead and pull out your kit and we're going to do the Let the Sun Shine In, Stay Cool gnome design. And it has definitely stayed cool here in Indiana. It might be summer, but we've been having lows in the 30s. And remember how your mom used to say, do as I say, not as I do? Here's a little tip for you. Do as I say, not as I do. It has, like I said, it's been in the 30s, and we have this adorable little shed at our new facility, and we have it all set up for our classes and our videos. And I just left everything out here, thinking that I'd come back the next day and do this second class demonstration with you. And because of the cold temperatures, my adhesive's not sticking, my paper is curling, my ink pads are drying up. So, word to the wise, you know when you get home from a crop and you're just exhausted and you're like, I will just leave it in the car and I will get it tomorrow morning. My advice to you is don't do that. All of this stuff is very temperature sensitive, so the heat, the cold, all will wreak havoc. So just my little mom tidbit for today. All right, as always, we do have the written instructions as well if you want to follow along. We also give you a list of all of the powder puff inks and the Nuvo glitter markers, and as always, these are optional. I personally like the effect that it does on the page, but if you're not comfortable using them or prefer not that look, those are always optional. So we're going to start with this left page here, and I'm going to leave the finished project here so that you can kind of see what it's going to look like in the end, and then you can see all the steps in between as we're putting this along together. The first thing we're going to do is go ahead and cut off that barcode strip of our background sheet here. This is from the adorable Photoplay collection. They have just done such a cute job with all of their gnome things. They have great designers working with them. All right, so that's going to be our background sheet here. Then the next thing we're going to do is this flamingo. Okay, who has the flamingo lawn ornament? I want to see a photo. Don't think I could convince my husband to do it. I think they're adorable though. If you would prefer, you could just cut some smaller pieces, that way you still have some of this left over. If you want to cut out the center section, since a lot of this is going to be covered up, you could do that. That way you would have a square of paper left over that you could use somewhere else as well. It's just incredibly adorable. I also suggest that you turn this over and take your cell phone and snap a photo of this side of the paper. And the reason for that, it serves as great inspiration when you go to create other summer themed pages. If you want to, keep going with the gnome collection here. This is great how they, made a floaty with the O. We have the watermelon with the flamingo. To me, it's just really cute inspiration. So I would suggest snap a photo, put that wherever you put all of your inspiration for your pages so that you have that side for a later time. We're going to go ahead and cut this down. It's a perfect square, so it doesn't matter which is horizontal, which is vertical. But we're going to cut it down to 10.5 by 10.5. All right, so once we have that perfect square cut there, when you go to adhere it, we are not going to adhere it directly in the center of the page. We're going to go slightly higher than center. So if you see here, when I lay this down, we do have the same amount of distance on either side here, but we have a little less of a border here than we do at the bottom. So we want to go just slightly higher than center. And then we're just going to run the adhesive along the back there. All right. And then again, when we adhere it, just slightly higher than center. Make sure your flamingos are going the right direction there. And we'll go ahead and put that down. Then these extra little pieces here, you can just use those. We don't need them anywhere else on the page, so you can put them in with your stash again. So if you want to do some additional coordinating pages for this, just save those for later. All right, for now, we're just going to take our overlay and we're just going to lay it on the page as the guide there. We want the upper spikes of our overlay to be right at the top of the page. And we're going to use this as our guide to go ahead and adhere the waves there at the bottom of the page. So in your page kit, go ahead and pull out the wave border. And we're going to need to adhere the two pieces together. I'm just going to run adhesive just along the bottom. And then we're going to adhere the light blue layer right flush to the bottom of that darker teal layer. All right, so when we adhere this, we just want to make sure, there we go, that we just have this aligned here at the, so that it's all the way at the top and that our spokes don't go any lower there. So it's going to go about like that. Then we're going to go ahead and adhere this wave layer here. So when I had put my adhesive, I'm only going to run it just along the bottom, of course on the back side. That way, as we need to tuck things in at the top here, we don't have those pinned down and have that flexibility. So I'm just going to run the adhesive just along the bottom edge. And adhere that just like so. All right, now for this next step, I'm just going to flip over that page. Maybe you can see it since I have a white tablecloth here. If you look at our final overlay, we're going to have fun with some markers here. So if you look at the word the and our sunshine and the word in, I have taken my Nouveau glitter markers and created kind of a different color for those particular pieces on the overlay. So all of our overlays come in white. And we do have this one available if you're interested. So they come packaged like this, and every one of our overlays give you 2 designs just as a sample to kind of get those creative juices going. So every one of them have samples of how to use that overlay. They all come in white, so you can use your Nouveau glitter markers or your Quick Quotes inks, and you could make them absolutely any color that you need to make them. So we're going to highlight the word the and the word in with our silver mist marker here. So I'm just going to fill in that entire the, coloring in all of those little pieces of white all the way around the letter there. And I don't really have to be careful since I'm using the back side of my layout here if my marker gets onto my base. So, but just think about that if you're doing it directly on your craft table. I would always suggest that you do this kind of thing on like a scrap piece of paper. That way you can kind of be messy and it doesn't really matter. If we didn't have the yellow background, it would be really cute also to color in our phrase with yellows and oranges. I didn't do it with this since that circle behind it there is yellow. You really wouldn't be able to see it. But you could almost just make this any color of the rainbow and really make that title stand out. You could also do the reverse and not do your title at all, but just do around the outside. You know, only use the oranges or the yellows, or again, who says that it has to be those colors, right? So you could start here and just do the colors of the rainbow. So every spoke would be a different color. That would be fun as well. So since they are white, with your markers, you could really make them any color. We teach a class on how to turn your Nouveau markers into watercolor paints, which would be a great technique for these as well, because then you really could go with any color, because we show you how to blend the Nouveau markers and how to kind of create your own color if the marker isn't the exact shade that you need. So again, I'm just going to fill in the word in and the word the. See, just like so there. See how much shimmer it is when you move it around in the light? They really pack a lot of shimmer in these little teeny markers. All right, for our sunshine, if you look here at my final project, I want my sunshine to look like it's behind the H. So just imagine that your H loop comes up like this and around, right? So when you use your markers, you want to only color up to that little imaginary line of your H. So don't fill the ray all the way in. We want to make sure we leave that loop of the H white. So we're going to use the golden ochre marker. And I am going to just pretend that there is an imaginary line there telling me where to stop. And then do the same with the other side. See what I'm doing there? If I hold that up really close. And then on the other side again, imagine that loop of the H and where that border might lay. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead and fill in the rest of our sun rays here. Just like so. So again, you can make this any color that you wanted. I did go with the traditional yellow since it has that orange backing. But any overlay could really be any color easily just by using your markers and your inks. All right. You got it? Good to go? Did it work out for you? I really am loving all of the uses of the markers. All right, so the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and layer all of our pieces for our sunshine. So in your baggie, you do have that shadow. We have that orange that's going to go behind our sunshine. So go ahead to your baggie here and pull out that orange shadow. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to run my adhesive on the back of the overlay. Just putting just a little bit on the rays just to make sure that it stays down. And then I'm going to flip it over and adhere that orange layer behind our sun. And that's just so we can now see the difference between the two layers there. But we totally wanted to mimic the rays of this paper with that technique there on our sun. All right, so we're now going to go ahead and adhere our yellow circle here. We're going to adhere it in the center of our green. See, isn't that adorable? It's that same summer theme collection. So stinking cute. All you Floridians are probably getting this kind of weather, not us. All right, right in the center. Then when I went to adhere my overlay to the final piece here. Now, if you look at our final, it's my photo mat just kind of covers up this bottom portion here, but our green circle here is kind of tucked underneath our waves, but I wanted our overlay to go on top. So I'm going to use it kind of as a guide there. I'm just going to lay my overlay in place and then just use it as the guide to go ahead and adhere this. And then when I adhere this, I'm going to tuck it underneath the top portions of the wave. Oops, let's go this way here. Going underneath the waves. And I want my overlay to go towards the top of the page there. So that it's going to go like so. Makes sense? That's another reason why I like the ATG gun. It's extremely tacky, but it's not so much that it doesn't allow me to kind of maneuver it around. But once I push it down, it is down forever. The only way that I'm going to get this piece up now is to kind of rip the layers apart. So something to think about too with the ATG. All right, when I go to adhere my overlay, I'm only going to put adhesive along that skinny edge here. That way, in case you wanted your photos to be different than mine, we have all of this room that we can kind of slip photos underneath later. So again, I'm only going to take my adhesive just along that skinny little circle portion of our overlay all the way around. And then we just want to make sure we get our title straight there. And then go ahead and push that down. Now, my photos are going to end up covering up a lot of this, but of course you can put your photos anywhere they're going to work for your photo shapes. But again, if all of this is left open, that kind of gives us some variety of where we're able to slip in all of those photos later. See, it's so chilly out here today. It's May and it's so cold in Indiana that none of my adhesive wants to stick. All right, we'll just make sure that's all stuck down there. All right, in your packet, we have given you an entire sheet of blue. That way you can cut your photo mats to whatever fits your photos. We also give you the dimensions, however, if you want to make it exact. So as I typically do, I'm just going to go ahead and cut them exactly as the sample. So I'm going to cut 2 mats that are 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. So we also offer the additional cardstock pack. So for all of our 12 by 12 page kits, you also have the option of purchasing 5 sheets of solid color, My Colors cardstock that would coordinate with that particular design. We also give you all of the colors that we have used in case you want to put together kind of your own cardstock pack. So if you like to double mat, if you like to triple mat, or maybe you're going to use this as your left page and then you're going to create your own right page, that way you have that list that's going to tell you all of the colors that will coordinate with this page. So now that we have these individually on our website, those would give you a list of all of the colors that we used. So just play around and see what kind of works best for you. I'm going to go ahead and run my adhesive And go ahead and put them down just like our sample here. Okay, and then we have the smaller one. When I do this, I also make sure I don't put adhesive where the photo mats kind of overlap each other. So if you notice, I didn't put the adhesive right there because that edge is going to overlap this mat here. That way I can stick a photo underneath later if I would like to do that. Alrighty, and just one more here. I think I'm actually going to tuck it up a little underneath that wave. All right, now for the fun part. Now let's go ahead and pull out the rest of our dies here. I'm going to set this aside just for a minute. And we are going to have fun with our dies. Okay, for our leaves, we're going to go ahead and do those first here. One of my favorite colors of the Quick Quotes Powder Puff inks was always the palm tree, and it's one that's been discontinued. So the one that's replacing it here is the Fields of Green. But because it's so much darker than the palm tree, I tend to use a dauber. So it's going to go from the ink pad to the dauber to my leaf. And that's just to make sure that it's just a slightly softer effect, because that is such a dark shade of green. And I'm going to go just a really light hand here to kind of give that just a little bit of shading. And then I'm going to do it again with our second one. This is a brand new ink pad for me, so I don't even need to reapply. I'm just going to use the ink that's already on the dauber. Just like so. So if you ever get a brand new ink pad and it's just really wet for you, a great thing to do is to use a dauber instead of going direct. All right, now I'm going to just go ahead and adhere both of those leaves to their shadow. There you can really see that pop of color. What a difference there that inking makes. Also, if you had the morning moss, maybe, if you had a green Nuvo marker, you could highlight down the center of that leaf. That would be really cute as well. And now we're just going to adhere the second leaf. All right, so now we have our little gnome character to put together. I'm just going to put those at the top here. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and glue his little shoes. I didn't ink those, but you are welcome to. If you were going to ink them, I would use probably navy would be a good choice if you wanted to ink the top of his shoes. All right, the next layer that needs to go is our beard. Now they've also discontinued the gray that I typically use when I'm inking something like this. So it's now substituted with cottonwood. And again, my cottonwood is a brand new pad, so it is extremely wet. So I'm going to use the dauber, and I am just going to lightly add some chalking ink. And I'm personally only going to do it down one side here. So just along that left edge. Probably with the lighting is a little hard to see, but I went pretty light-handed with that inking. Then I'm just going to draw some highlights with our silver mist. If you remember, we did do this on our last class page, and I had suggested if you prefer, you could always draw first, so you could draw kind of the strands of hair and then fill them in with the marker. That way, if you're afraid of kind of putting it in the wrong spot or want to see what it looks like first, that you could go ahead and do that. I'm just going to go for it. Really, when all is said and done, that beach ball takes up a lot here. All right. Then once we get that drawn, then we're going to go ahead and adhere our beard to our black base. Then the next piece we're going to do here is his little hat. I did ink his hat as well if you would like to do that. I inked that with Aloha. And I am just going to go direct with the ink pad this time. But again, if you have an ink pad that's relatively new or relatively wet, go ahead and pull out a dauber. If you notice, I did use 2 separate daubers. You want to make sure you have a dauber for every color of ink. Unless you want them to blend colors, you want to make sure that you would never use the dauber on 2 separate colors because they will pick up the colors from each ink pad. So I have a separate one for every color of ink. All right, now we're going to put together our little beach ball. This one you'll have to make sure you look at the sample. It can be a little confusing how it goes together. I did ink just the red piece, so that's kind of up to you there, but I did ink the red because the red is the largest piece and the one that's really going to show up with the ink there. I inked that with the barn board. You could also use something like a Bloody Mary or a mahogany. The general rule of thumb when you're inking is you want to go just a couple shades darker than what your paper is. All right, so basically we're following the curve. So if you look, I followed the curve of my red with our outer layer of orange there. You know, before I go on, I did forget to ink the yellow ball itself, and I used the pumpkin pie. So I'm just going to lightly go around that. Just like so, and then I'm going to continue adding my pieces here. So we have this a little bit darker blue piece. And again, we're following the curve. And remember in the end that we want that little portion of where they all meet there. So I'm just going to lay that orange there. I haven't glued that yet. I just laid it there so that I see where all of the puzzle pieces are going to fit in. And again, we're going to follow the outside curve of our ball there. Oops. All right, and you could ink this little orange piece if you would like. I would suggest to go ahead and just use your barn board since it's right there. I'm just going to go ahead and adhere it right to the page, just as it is. All right, now that our ball is complete, we're going to go ahead and adhere it to the center of our little gnome. We just want to make sure that we have room at the top for his little nose. So like so there. All right, and now we're going to ink our hands and our nose. And if you remember from the first class, I am going to use Strawberry Milkshake, and then I'm immediately going to go back over it with my coconut. And remember, I have reserved a special coconut ink that I use this technique for. So I have 2 separate coconuts. One I use just as is, and one I use specifically to soften that dark pink. That pink is just a little darker than the discontinued pink cheeks. But if you look at the ink pad, that's really going to pick up a lot of that pink ink. So we wouldn't want to transfer that to anything else. So I, again, have one coconut that I saved just for this technique. And then one coconut that I leave just when I want to do white. Just enough to kind of soften that edge there. All right, once we get those 3 pieces all inked, I'm going to use my 3D foam so that my hands and my nose are all kind of popped just a little bit off the page. So I'm just going to use my tiny squares here. And we'll put one on the back of his nose. Just for a little dimension. It's okay if you don't want the extra dimension though. You can just leave it flat. And then we're going to put one on the back of each tiny little hand here. There we go. And we're going to make it look here like he's holding the ball. So if you look here, see how we have the black? That kind of tells you where his hands are going to go. We're just going to directly cover that little outside black portion of our die cut there. And there we go. Isn't he adorable? It's just amazing what 3D foam and the difference that just the inking and just the little silver highlights can do. It really makes him look like he's been a purchased embellishment versus just a die cut that we have cut just out of solid color paper. All right, so the last thing I need to do is just adhere these pieces, and then we're going to put that little pom-pom addition to his hat. So I'm going to run my adhesive along the back of all 3 of those pieces. And let's see here. Let's play around with a little bit till I get them where I like them. All right, I think that will work. All right, so now we have this fun little pom-pom that we're going to add to the tip of his hat. I thought it was just a great way to add a little bit of extra dimension to the page. I love the little pom-poms. I would suggest that you use a glue dot to adhere that. I forgot to bring my glue dots out to the shed, so I'm gonna roll up a little bit of our ATG runner here and kind of create my own little glue dot. I'm gonna run that on the back of our hat and then put that right to our page. Adorable. All right, let's go ahead and do our final page of the day. So now we're going to do the second page of our spread, which is our Stay Cool page here. So now we're using that just really fun paper here from Photo Play that has all of these fun little gnomes. Again, I would suggest that you take a snapshot with your phone, use this as your inspiration to create, additional pages. If you look at that little fish. How adorable. Cut a fish with some snorkeling gear and put the snorkeling gear on the fish. I think that's just, it would be so cute on a page. So everywhere, find inspiration everywhere. I always find inspiration in the pattern paper of all of the designs. So I'm just going to cut off that barcode strip. And this is the back of that really pretty sunshine paper there. We're going to use this side for this page. You obviously would be welcome to use that side if you didn't want it quite as busy. So if you notice, when I use something like this, I always put either a solid color, or I put something that just has a very, very slight kind of monochromatic pattern on top of this page. And the reason I do that is we need kind of an area that our eye can ground itself and kind of rest to look at our photos. So I really love this, but I wanted something that's kind of going to differentiate our photos from this background layer. So in your packet, you have this bedazzled blue shimmer cardstock here. And we're going to cut it down. We're going to cut it down to 11 by 11, and then we're going to adhere it in the center of the page. So I do realize that it's going to cover up a lot of our gnomes, but there's still enough there that you're able to see the fun patterns, but it also gives your eye a chance to kind of rest before that it gets to the photos. But see, when we have our background here, just by putting this down, how you can still see some of that fun border all the way around, but now we kind of have a base work to add all of the rest of our elements on this page. So I'm going to run my adhesive. And again, this paper here is from the Glimmer collection of My Colors cardstock. This one is bedazzled blue. If you like the glimmer textures, don't forget we do sell a pack that has one sheet of every color. So all 30 colors of that glimmer cardstock. That way you can kind of use that there as your swatch book. All right, now that we have the blue down, now we're going to go ahead and add just that little strip of yellow at the bottom that's really going to do two things. It's going to tie in to our original page, so it helps bring this pattern over here to really make this cohesive. It also, because of the direction of our rays here, if you notice, when you look at this page, your eye's automatically going like this. So it's really, really subtle, but it's a great way to lead your eye into the top where we're going to put all of our photos. But I do need to cut this down first. So we cut this to 11 inches, so we need this to be 10 3/4, just because we want to make sure we see that little bit of blue still showing all the way around. So we're going to cut it down to 10 3/4. Doesn't matter which end that you take that off of. And then we're going to adhere it to the bottom of our page. All right. And then I wanted to kind of add in a pop of color, and I also wanted to make sure that we brought the pink over here in a pretty distinctive way. Because of the pink on the flamingos, the pink on the tip of his hat, I wanted to make sure that I brought in a stripe that would incorporate that pink onto this side of the page as well. So we're going to put this green strip just slightly resting on that yellow. I didn't want it to go all the way across, so I'm going to snip just a little teeny bit off of it. So just a hair. We want it to be about 11 3/4 or so, so we're not going to take off a lot. And then this one is going to be just slightly smaller than that, so about 11 1/2 there. It's okay if it goes clear across the page. I just wanted to make sure that I, had a distinctive edge with our background sheet. Alrighty, so when we adhere this down, if you notice, I'm going to go about here. So if I show you here, we're going to go down quite a bit into our yellow. And the reason is that if you use your photo mats identical to mine, we want to make sure we have that room at the top. So I'm going to go pretty low onto our yellow. If you are going to make it exact, you could do one of two things. You could go ahead and put your white down first, or if you pull out just one of the words here and kind of use that as your guide. So if our cool was going there, we just want to make sure, let's put that to the side there. We just want to make sure that we can still see our lowercase letters underneath. So, about like so. Does that make sense? Alrighty, and then we're going to go ahead and put adhesive with our stripe. And put that in the center. See, when we add that stripe, it automatically really makes the pink pop out. Even though there's a lot of colors on that stripe, that pink really becomes predominant, and it's a great way to tie in the two pages. Let's go ahead and put our Stay Cool title down. And then we'll end with our gnomes here. All right. So we have the shadow as the base, and then we're just going to adhere each of our little individual letters to our shadow here. And again, this was created using that new offset feature if you use Cricut in Design Space. And I'm just going to keep layering, adding each of our black layers there to our white base. All right, so there's our stay. And then we'll do our cool here. All right, now we're getting to our final letter here. We have our L. And then we have the period that's going to go. This is a command. Stay cool. All right, then once we get all of those layers together, then we're going to go ahead and add that here to the base of our page. It's going to go about in the center of that yellow. So again, just run my adhesive on the back. You could do this with 3D foam squares as well if you like the dimension. It'd be really easy to go ahead and pop this entire title there at the bottom. All right, for the next step here, again, I love texture when it comes to my pages. So in your packet, you have some twine. Now, everybody's twines could be a little different colors. Chances are it's either going to be pink or it's going to be a bluish color. And we're going to lay it across the bottom here, kind of through the center of our stripe. And it's going to be double layered. So we'll want to cut that in half. so that we have the two separate layers. And you can just lay it straight across just like that, or I kind of wanted to mimic kind of like the ocean waves. So if you notice on my final sample here, I did kind of made that in a wave kind of pattern. So the first thing I did was I just take some washi tape or some blue painter's tape and just go ahead and adhere one side down. And then I kind of put them into my wave pattern here. And I didn't go too crazy with it, just a little bit. And to make sure that it stayed kind of in that pattern, just every so once in a while, I'm just going to put a tiny little puddle of adhesive. You just want to make sure it's adhesive that's really going to dry clear. And then I'm just putting little piles, I don't know, about every 2-3 inches, just enough so that it will maintain that wave pattern, so that it kind of stays in the spots that I want it to stay. All right, and then we're just going to take the other end and adhere those legs to the back. You're welcome just to put it tight and go just clear across the center of that stripe there, whatever works for you. So we gave you the exact dimensions if you wanted it to be just like this. Each mat is 3.5 by 5. So the mat would be 1/4 of an inch bigger than that for all 3 of these. So they're all 4 the same size. But if you notice, I just made these 2 photos smaller so that we could fit in our characters here. So it really depends on where you're going to put all of your photos. But we're going to go ahead and put all of our little gnomies together. So the same thing that we did with our leaves on the other page, I'm just going to go ahead and mimic that same thing here. So again, I'm using the fields of green. I'm going to see how wet this is from the ones we just did. Chances are, yeah, it's going to be plenty dark enough. I also find that using daubers kind of helps the longevity of my my inks as well, because again, we just did a couple daubs and we're able to go over several die cuts because it really sticks to that dauber there. I just went along one edge. You of course could go all the way around with this piece. Just make sure that we want to see just that little bit of green still, so you don't want to go too far in. And then we're going to adhere our leaves to our base. Okay. Like so. And again, if you had that green marker, you could go around the edge. You could trace down the center stem there. If you wanted to add just another little glimmer touch to that. For our sun, I did ink the edges of just the orange, and I inked them with the barn board. And I'm going to go all the way around. Just like so. And then go ahead and adhere the center of our sun. All right, now I'm going to put together our little Gnomie here with our ice cream cone. So just like with our other gnomes, we're going to start with his shoes first. So if you wanted, you could ink the top of his shoes. Again, I would pull out that barn board. You don't really see a whole lot of the shoes, so it's perfectly okay to just kind of leave that plain as well. And I'm going to go ahead and adhere his little red shoes. All right. And then kind of the same steps and the same kind of sequence that we did before. The next is going to be the beard. And I did again use a little bit of that cottonwood, but since we are using the dauber, I'm just going to use whatever is left over from the dauber and super lightly go on one edge. And then I'm just going to give just a tiny little highlight here. I'm just going to go just a little bit, kind of like so. You can kind of see that there. All right, and we're going to go ahead and adhere the beard. I just want to make sure I show you one more step here. We're quickly running out of time. But I want to show you one little thing too that I did here with our sunglasses and our Nouveau marker. So you have the two portions of our sunglasses. We have the red base with the blue lens. Just go ahead and add those two together. And then we're going to accent the lens with our silver mist. So I'm just going to draw just 3 lines just to kind of give it that reflection like it would be on the sunglasses there. Doesn't he kind of look like he would be like from a ZZ Top or something like that from the band? All right, so then I'm just going to go ahead and put the rest of the pieces together just as I would the other gnomes. Again, I'm going to ink the nose and the hands and then use the 3D foam squares to adhere those. So I'm going to go ahead and put these together and then I'll meet you right back just in a few seconds when they're all assembled. All right, now we have our first little character done there. Our little ice cream holding gnome, our tie between Cousin It and ZZ Top there. So incredibly cute though. So once we have him all finished, then we're going to go ahead and do our very last gnome. And we're going to do it just exactly in the same order as we've done kind of all of the rest of them. So I'm going to go ahead and ink all of my pieces, and just like our other gnomes, we're going to go in the exact same sequence where we start with his shoes, go with the beard, and layer from there. So I'm just going to go ahead and start inking and putting him all together. All right, so all I got to do now is just add our hands and our nose. So again, we have that little black bump out there of where the one hand is going to hold on. We'll add our nose. Again, I used the 3D foam square so we could kind of pop our nose and our hands. And then we'll just add our other hand there, just like that. And again, I would use kind of some glue dots. Got a red pom-pom for this one. I'm just going to make my own glue dot, kind of rolling up some of my ATG here. Put that at the end of our hat. So there we have our two cute little gnomes there. So when we go to put these on the page, it's going to depend on exactly where you're going to put your photos. So if you have this like this, you know, if you have a lot of photos, maybe you're just going to want to put one guy and use the other one on something else. So, you know, you could just kind of tuck this in like that, and really you have a ton of room that you could add all kinds of photos there. So this is, again, really going to just depend on how much space that you need for your photos. I'm going to go ahead and finish up the page here, and I'm going to cut the photo mats as you would see them in the sample. So when you get some photos on this, or perhaps you've done it just a tad different than I have, please always reach out to me and show me those photos. I love seeing all that creativity. We are also going to teach a class in person and virtually later this year on taking inspiration from others and how to take that inspiration and kind of twist it and make it your own, so that you're only using it as an inspiration. You're not copying it directly. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and complete the page here. Again, I'm going to add all of my die cuts just as they're shown in the original sample. All right, we have our little surfer dude down there. And then we're going to add our little cousin gnome at the top of the page. All right, there we go. We did it. We have another completed 2-page spread with our gnomes. Thank you so much for joining us for classes today. Don't forget that they will remain here forever. So if you didn't quite catch up, or maybe you just wanted to sit and watch it all the way through the first time, you're always welcome to come back to this exact group and watch this at any time. But don't go too far, because in just a couple minutes here, we're going to have another demo and the rest of our contest. And of course, you want to see our grand finale video for the day. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you just in a couple minutes.